Super excited today to welcome Veri Ferdiansyah. Veri is my former coworker at Dana Cita in Indonesia, and he's kindly volunteered his time to be with us today. So super excited. Thanks, Veri, for being with us.
No,
Veri is currently head of core platform, basically very senior at this Indonesian national e-payments company called LinkAja. And so I'll let Veri share more about the company and what the company does later on. Okay, thanks, Martin. Prior to LinkAja, Veri was CTO at a media company in Indonesia called Assumpsi. Assumpsi was a startup, and Veri has been very accomplished working with startups in his career. He was really passionate about startups. He likes that kind of 0 to 1 or 1 to 10, 10 to 100 kind of phase of a company. And so you can share more about his experience working at different startups. Prior to Assumpsi, Veri was freelancing for a while, did some work at a few different consulting work at different companies. And before that, he was working with me. This was in 2018 at this company called Dana Cita, doing student loans, where we had a lot of fun. We were some of the first engineers in this company. And so we had a lot of liberty to design things the way we wanted to, which is cool. And I think we'll hear more about that later. And then before Dana Cita, Veri was also VP of engineering at a few relatively prominent startups in Indonesia as well. And then, of course, Veri did study computer science. He did a master's in Japan at, I'm forgetting the name of the university now, at Toyohashi University in Japan. And also did his undergrad at ITB, Institut Teknologi Bandung, which is one of the best technology schools in Indonesia. So quite a privilege to be with Veri today. Thanks, Veri, for being with us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. Okay. Oh, okay. So
maybe we can just do a brief introduction, and then we'll open it up to questions from the students. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Hi, guys. Well, I'm Veri, as Kaya mentioned. Well, a bit of my background, I graduated from a computer science background, both in my bachelor's and in my master's. I did research of NLP, natural language processing, from my master's, where I basically try to automatically generate a Japanese transcription from an English lecture. So my study at that time was that I was using MIT OpenCourseware lectures, where, well, basically it's in English, of course, and then I try to transcribe the speech and then translate those transcription into a Japanese language. And then that was in 2014 where I got my degree, and then I did a little work in Tokyo, about a year or so, doing sales and marketing for a manufacturing company before I decided to get back to Indonesia and start my software engineering journey. And I've been in quite a number of startups. So I was usually either their first engineer or their single digits employee, where I really enjoy working in early stages, because I get to say a lot about the product that we want to build. I mean, because I'm gonna build the foundation, and even the founders, sometimes they don't really sure yet about the product that they want to build. So I can give a lot of inputs, a lot of insights, and I can also learn a lot from the founders about the market if I don't really understand at all. This one time, before I joined Dana Cita, I worked at an e-commerce company, but they're selling building materials like cement, ceramics, and those kind of things, where basically those are the things that you're not usually buy online, right? You have to go to the store and let's see the things with your own eyes, and then you decided which one to buy. But then we kind of wanted to treat them as an FMCG kind of thing, which didn't work out, but it was quite an experience, and I learned a lot about that kind of industry, because it's construction is a very, very old industry. Like, it's been around since, like, I think, like, forever. And just recently, I moved to LinkAja, where LinkAja is a fintech company. We're basically not really a national fintech company like Kai mentioned. We're just like, we started as a subsidiary of Telkomsel, one of the biggest telco provider in Indonesia. And it was like 2 years ago, and then like we separate ourselves as a different entity from Telkomsel, and we became LinkAja, where we have several government-owned banks as our shareholders. So we're not really a, like, what you call like a startup per se, because we kind of like half owned by a government entity, and then half owned by like traditional VCs. Like, we were backed by Grab, by Gojek as well, and several other VCs. So what we're doing is that we don't really try to dominate the Indonesian market, because we definitely not, probably you might not hear of us a lot, like, outside of Indonesia, compared with like GoPay from Gojek or other players. But and even in Indonesia, we're not really strong in tier one cities like Jakarta, Bandung, Surabaya, and those big cities. But we have strong foothold within the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, where usually those big players don't really pay attention, or they don't really have enough resources in those cities. So we're basically fighting, setting our summer foothold in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. I think that's the gist of LinkAja, I could say.
Awesome. Very cool. Thanks, Veri, for that introduction. Maybe we can open up to questions from the group.
Yes.
Yes, we do have a few. Oh, sorry. Sam mentioned we have a few questions. We have a lot of questions in Pigeonhole, so I'm going to be covering those as well. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, Porter.
Okay, I'm super curious, because I was looking through your LinkedIn, and like you said, you're going through, you're doing a sales and marketing, and then project management, and then went back to a technical role.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, what sparked that position?
Okay.
Like, then, like, what the difference is, because project management, you don't really touch the technical side, right? You I was wondering why you switched back.
Okay, got it. So well, to start, I think, like, dating back to my university days, like during my, I think it's like my 4th or 5th semester, I was seriously thinking to change my major, since my grades were, I only got it like 2.5 GPA to tell you the truth. Yeah. So I was like seriously thinking whether computer science is like the right major for me. So that's why even going midway to my master's degree, I was still wondering whether this is the right career choice for me. That's why I tried a sales and marketing role within a manufacturing company. But then, like, in 2015, early 2015, the startup world is start booming in Indonesia, especially, like, basically if you have a pitch deck, then basically you can get like funding from anyone, right? Even with building a single product. So I was, well, that's one thing I don't really want to miss the hype train. Like, that's one of my several decisions, decide going back to Indonesia, and Even so, back then I applied to this startup called Zimi, right? It's a live streaming company. Initially, I applied for their marketing position, and then the founders have we had a chat. I had a chat with the founders, and they kind of want to put me in a product management role, because I'm not sure what he saw in me. Then I just took up to the challenge, because at that time it's my first time knowing that a product manager role exists. I mean, I didn't even know there's a product manager out there. I was just why not? Uh, so I started my product management stint, and it was really fun. I learned a lot. I learned both the business side and the technical side of things. But what uh, what's wrong with me at that time was that I was more inclined into the engineers. So sometimes I made some decisions that does it it's gonna benefit the company, but uh I'm more inclined to uh what's the word, giving leeway, a bit of leeway to engineers, just because I talk with them a lot more, and I sit with them every day. So I kind of distance myself to the sales and marketing teams also. So that was my mistake back then, and I do realize that couple years after my work at Zimi. And then I moved to another product manager role in a new startup. Then after that didn't work, I kind of thinking that I always, even during my stint as a product manager, as a product guy, I always incline towards the engineers, not being exactly in the middle of things, because as a product guy, you have to be exactly in the middle of everything, so that you can grasp uh, a lot of things from everywhere, right? Because I always tend to incline to the engineer. So I was kind of challenging myself that why didn't I try to be an engineer? I have this computer science background. I like to code, even though probably not that much, not as much as Kai. Uh, but I kind of want to try. I kind of want to challenge myself, and then an opportunity came in to be a software engineer. At first, it really was a challenge. It's my first time doing software engineering professionally. I did a lot of software engineering personally, on personal level, personal projects, but then on a professional level, it's totally different. Because everything that you write, everything that you make, gonna cost you a lot, real money, right? Real business. So uh, well, thankfully I got a good mentor back then. My CTO was really supportive of me. He taught me a lot of things. We were good friends in college. So he's quite patient with me. I think if 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 I didn't have him as a CTO, as my mentor back then, I would I would say that I would give up, after couple months or maybe even a year, and probably get back to product management. So that's what sparks me into, actually software engineering as a way of living is kind of fun. So that's why since 2017, if I'm not mistaken, then I always continue my career as a software engineer.
Nice.
Oh, thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Veri, for sharing.
Very applicable to us for our career switching also, and the feelings that we're going through as well.
Mm.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
Ferry, I just realized one of our students, Sam,
Yeah.
pointed out to me that, hey, we actually prepared a pigeonhole, which is like a Q&A board. I'm not sure if you have access to it, but I have access to it. And the students have kind of compiled questions and upvoted them. So I'm just going to read out some of the student questions from that board.
Sure.
So that hopefully things can go a bit smoother. Okay, top voted question is, any tips of, and from Shannan Wong, thanks Shannan for asking the question. Any tips of learning fast? There are always trade-offs for learning. So is it either a compromise between doing and reading? Maybe I didn't ask the question right. Is it either a compromise between doing and reading, right? Basically, like how do you learn quickly? How deep should I be reading the material, or should I just learn just enough so that I can implement something? What's your opinion on this?
Okay. Well, I think there's no like correct answer for that. I think in my opinion, like everybody learns differently. What works for me myself is that I usually just do it. Like when I was at Asumsi, it was my first time as a CPO. So I was like before that I was jobless for like 3 months or so because of the pandemic. But then like I got a job straight as a CTO in a media company, which already getting traction. And I don't at that time I don't really want to do just the same thing, because I finally a CTO and I can do like a lot more than I would usually allowed to, right? So I kind of started like experimenting using microservices. That's actually the first time I learned about microservices, and well, I already
maybe you can elaborate a bit what microservices are, because I think not everyone here might know what this.
Got it. Okay, sorry. So well, microservices is basically usually if you build a backend system, right? Usually just put it in a single. I think the easiest way to say this is in a single repository, right? Where basically you have your like authentication mechanism there. You have your I'm not in case of like fintech, probably like payment mechanism there, and so on and so forth, right? But microservices is basically where you break those things down, so it's not interconnected. It's not dependent of each other. So you have your you basically kind of like create a separate repository for each services, where you have your authentication mechanism like in this A repository and your payment in this B repository, so that if the payment system is down, then basically your user can still like log in, register, and so on, but they just cannot do like anything related with payments, right? I think that's one of the beauty, the plus side of microservices compared with monolithic system, where basically if one system is down, then basically everything is down. You cannot like do anything, right? Well, I already read a lot about microservices like up to that point, but I never truly understands it. So what works for me is that, well, just do it first, right? And then like while doing, you might stumble upon mistakes, stumble upon like things that you don't really understand. And if I stumbled upon those kind of things, then I read more. So it's not like read first or like do it first. I always like do it, and then like if I think that I need some deeper some more materials to understand about it in depth, then I look for it, and then like back to like doing it, and then like read again. I think that's what works for me so far, and I don't really want to emphasize on speed, on like how fast can you learn anything, because that doesn't mean that if you learn faster than the others, that doesn't mean that you're better engineers than the others, So I wouldn't recommend you to focus on like, oh, say within this week I have to master for example like microservices. That is not gonna do it. You know, you can't really do it with software engineering.
Yeah, can you elaborate on that? What does it mean? What do you mean when you say it doesn't mean that learning faster means that you're a better engineer?
Yeah, I mean, say you're working, if you're working like if you're not the first engineer in a company, basically you're gonna read an old code base, right? There's probably this one guy that can read the code base better than you, right? So that you might think, oh, this guy learned better than me. So this one guy probably just need like 2 or 3 days, and then like he can already like push things to production. But you might need a week or two more, then you can push things to production. So in my opinion, that doesn't mean that this guy is more skillful than you. He's more he's probably just really good at reading someone else's code. He's probably just really he's better than you at that one thing. That doesn't mean that he's this guy's actually better than you in everything related with software engineering. Like because because we usually have in big companies, especially in and also in LinkAja, we already separate teams to several groups. Like there's a DevOps teams, there's a QA team, there's quality engineering team, and so on and so forth. So that because that doesn't mean that those guys in the DevOps teams are gonna be better than you in everything. It just means that DevOps teams are better than you in DevOps related environment, DevOps related knowledge, right? They might be like know a bit about software engineering, but just be sure that I'm still better than those guys in this field, in my field. Because even with the software engineering, we have like different fields, right? So don't push yourself too hard on that matter, because it's I experienced that myself. I always thought that because like he's a CTO, then basically then that's gonna mean that he's better than me in every single aspect of software engineering. Then like when I talk with him, I asked him to be a mentor. Oh, well, he's probably good at some, but then I'm still better than him at some aspects. So it's just that it's a coincidence that the things that he's better of help him to be a CTO faster than me. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We have a question from Samantha. Hey, Sam. We have a question from Samantha, which is, what is the engineering scene in Indonesia like? What kind of problems or companies are the best engineers working at in Indonesia?
Okay. Well, in terms of engineering scene, I would say it's I only know this scene within startup world. Okay, so we definitely have like a lot of like big companies, big banks out there, and I'm not really like familiar with what's going on there. But within like top kind of like 5-10 startups in Indonesia, I would say that there's a lot of talent war in here, where usually if like in LinkAja, for example, you're not allowed to move to other fintech companies, like kind of like GoPay, OVO, Dana, those kind of like fintech companies, just because you're from that's our competitor. And the same goes for them. So because I also already like I experienced this myself. I already interviewed like dozens of engineers, and the scarcity of talent is real. I mean, there are lots of software engineer out there, but finding a good, not just good, not really. What's between good and best? I mean, looking for those kind of guys are a challenge. I mean, it's really hard. A lot of people like label have title called like software engineers here, software engineers there, but most of them that I've met, usually this is usually the case for engineers who have, I think, like around 4 to 5 years of experience. Most of them can do software engineering. They can code. I mean, they can create, awesome apps, awesome like front end stuff, awesome like back end stuffs. But a number of them also don't know shit about the technology they're using. By this, I mean, let's say, do you guys know like React JS, right? You guys know React, right?
Yeah, so we do React in our bootcamp. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So, well, a lot of engineers that I've interviewed know how to build a website using React. But then, when I ask, what are React life cycles? What are do you know what is a higher order component in React, and why? And can you give me like an example on when it's better to use a higher order component in React, or things like what is Webpack? Why we need a Webpack or other bundler in our React app? I think like those kind of it's not really deeply technical, but you use it, right? You use it in your daily life as a React engineer. So in my opinion, that you at the very least you have to know that. You have to actually know the tools that you're using, not just like know how to use it, but like know how that tools works. Because those are the kind of question that we ask here at LinkAja when we want to hire senior level or a specialist level engineers.
So like a bit deeper beyond the surface of just implementing it.
Yes. Yeah. Because like it's easy to implement things, right? It's harder to actually understand the things that you're implementing.
Yeah. Sam, does that answer your question? Because I know your question was about the types of companies that the best engineers are working at. Maybe did Veri answer the question, and will you have any follow-up questions for Veri?
I think hi Veri, thanks for answering the question.
Hi, Sam.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, based on your experience with startups, like this is your experience with like hiring and working with engineers. So I think that's really like valuable. I think like I'm still not very clear on, like you said. So for example, are there any companies in Indonesia that you look up to because they have like a strong engineering culture, or like what? Yeah, like are there engineering teams that you admire in Indonesia?
Okay, got it. So in terms of teams as a whole, I don't really have one in mind because sometimes it's when you're actually in that team, sometimes it can be like underwhelming. So from the outside, you may see that, oh wow, the technology must be like this great. They must be like this and this and this. But then like when you get inside the company, then it can be like underwhelming for you. But so I what I look up to is actually the individual, and by individual I don't really mean the individual that speaks in public a lot. I mean, because there's sometimes there are like several CPOs in Indonesia as well that always in public, and that makes me wonder that how can you find time, like to always like speak in public, uh, because because you know uh my what the guy that I really look up to was the former city of Traveloka. I didn't you remember, right? When Daniel brought him to Denachita, he's he never like he never speaks in public, I think. But when our CTO at that time like bring him to our office, I can sense the vibe that this guy is really really smart. I felt intimidated like by him, just by him being present in the room. I think those kind of I I always look up to guys that give me those kind of chills, those kind of feeling, because uh then I know that this guy is really really smart. He just didn't really like to show it off like in public. He just like show it off with his work. And there are like several other executives in other startup that I look up to, like this a guy from Mercari. He was one of my mentor. He was a former CTO of Kudo, which got acquired by Grab Indonesia. He's really humble. He's I only met him once in person when at the Nachita, when Daniel bring him to the office. Kai wasn't there at the time. Hasn't joined us, and he's an all around good guy, and he gave me those feeling as well. And when I like a couple years back, I think like it was like around last year, or I think it was around last year when I got accepted as a CTO. I asked him to be my mentor because, well, he's been there. He was a CTO of a company, and he gave me a lot of insights, and so those kind of feelings that I get, those kind of intimidated feelings, it's still true until now. But now I prove it that there's there are reasons for me to get intimidated because, well, after I know him more personally, I totally understand now why I get those kind of feelings. He's really smart. He's humble. Even though he rarely speaks in public, a lot of people knows him. I think those are the traits that of people that I kind of like look up to. You don't really need to be always in public to make people know you. That's, well, of course people know you because your name is always like in marketing materials everywhere. But if the public knows you, but you're like rarely speaks in public, basically they kind of know you because of what you're doing, of your skill set. I think that's what happens here in Indonesia, in the tech scene.
Cool. Thanks, Veri. Thanks, Veri. On to the next question. We have Sam. Sam, did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, awesome. On to the next question. We have a top voted question by Tinesh. And Tinesh, I'm going to invite you to ask your question. Hopefully we can encourage more other voices.
Yeah. Thanks, Veri, for doing this. I think it's a good way to segue because you just briefly mentioned stuff like mentorship and guidance and stuff like that. The previous guest last week talked about how when he hires people or developers who have only experience in the startup scene sort of lack mentorship, lack that sort of guidance. Yeah. So as someone who, personally, I'm also interested in working in 0 to 1 or 0 to 10 or whatever you call it development. I think having that influence in the business of the operation side of the house is quite interesting. But does that come at a cost of lack of guidance, lack of long-term sort of development? If you did your journey in a different order, where you did like a lot of startup stuff first, would you see yourself having sort of less of an edge, so to speak? Does all the experience of working as a project manager, stuff like that first, help you in being a cowboy in a zero startup? Does that help? So would you recommend junior dev sort of go somewhere established, learn how things are done at big companies before they explore helping out in the startup scene? And what do you think about that in general?
Okay. So in my own case, like being in a product management before I jumped into software engineering, like makes me quite unique in a way, because usually people tends to move to product engineering after they become software engineer. Like you can like try asking like several product managers, probably like some of them like started career as a software engineers, but for me it's the other way around. Well, it in my case, I can say it's unique because from that point on, every time I build a software, I always look at the end goal first. I think that's what product managers do, right? They usually like look at the end goals, what we want to build, what we're trying to achieve, and then like break it down to the present, right? And I think that's something that I still have within me up until now. Even though like I can't really say that none other software engineers like do the same thing as me, but I think that's how the product management stint like helped me to be the software engineer I am. And as for mentorship, well, I think it's there's no like there's no right or wrong in here, whether it's better to be in an early stage startup first or in a big company first. I think what I really want to redo is that having a mentor like early in my career. I really regret that I didn't have a mentor so early in my career, because it really helps me a lot. I mean, well, even though it might not be the same as a teacher or a friend that you can like bug every day, or probably you don't really ask him or her questions when you find a bug in your code, or when you're like learning something. But an insights from mentor, if you found a correct one, because you might ask a lot of people to be your mentor, but then like you probably kind of realize that, oh, well, this guy is probably better for me right now. This guy is probably quite too advanced in the future, kind of mentor. So if you could find the right mentor early in the career, then I think it doesn't matter where you land up land your first software engineering gig, whether it's in a listed startup or a big size company. It's gonna benefit you a lot. The only difference is that in early stage you can touch a lot of things. You can touch infrastructure, you can touch the front end, the back end. Well, even our CTO at the Nachita, he didn't know how to set up an SSL certificate in a server, and he's a CTO of a company. That's still hilarious for me until now. But then compared with in the big companies, where you're already assigned a team, right? Whether you're in the front end or in the back end or in the infrastructure, and probably they already have a set of best practices that you need to follow. Like in here, we use Golang for our backend development, and it's already quite established, where we we develop to some extent, and then like we create the unit testing, and then for the automation and the QA testing is going to be done by other teams. So you don't really get the experience of setting up your own server and learning how to do automation within the company. You have, if you want to experience that, you have to do it yourself in a personal project. And I believe that experiencing a little bit of everything, it can give you better perspective in how things work and in how you will develop your next product.
I agree. Awesome. Thanks, Veri. Moving on to the next question. The next one is from me, which is a fun question. Hopefully not too embarrassing. What is your favorite memory of working with Kai?
Okay. Well, my favorite memory working with Kai when he was in charge with front end development of the Najita back then, right? And well, I'm not a front end engineer myself, but I know for sure that you shouldn't use cards for everything. I mean, well, if you guys happen to open the Bootstrap library, then there's a card, right? And Kai uses card for every single thing. I mean, and when we decided to refactor that later on, it was a mess. I mean, it's only Kai who understands the code. Well, Kai, well, he's smart, as you guys might notice. But then, he did an abstraction in software engineering is usually a good thing, right? But then, too much abstraction means you might kill yourself, and that's what Kai did. He basically did an abstraction on top of abstraction where it became lost in translation. So
I'm glad that you refactor it. This is why we need Veri to refactor to help to make code better. Okay, moving on to the next question. Is a question from Sam again. Sam, what kind of engineering?
Sorry.
Oh, do you have access to the question, Sam?
No.
Or maybe I can share. Or maybe, okay. Maybe I can. Is it helpful if I? Oh, is it helpful if I share my screen and then we can look at this? Yeah, I think yeah, I think it's nice to have students ask.
What kind of engineering culture do you aspire to build yourself at your current company, and what companies do you really admire for the engineering culture?
Okay, so well, the culture, I could say my first experience in Asumsi, where I actually initiate the culture, right? We initiate the culture of openness. That's what I really want to build. By openness, I mean that I'm really open if you wanted to move, say you're a front end now, and then you kind of want to challenge yourself and be a backend engineer or doing infrastructure, for example. As long as you have the wants and the basic skill set needed, then I would definitely be happy to move you if we actually in need of some help in that department. So if you just wanted to move just for the fun of it, then well, that's not a good justification, right? And also I wanted to build a culture of sharing where we do sharing probably once every 2 weeks or once every month, where we share not just what we built or what we are currently building, but well, anything in general, really. If you just found this awesome library, or you just tried this new programming languages, then and you think that it's really good for us to at least know about it, then just basically just propose it and we can set up a time and just have a casual chat about it. And also, I don't really want to you know, I kind of tend to not really restrict my engineers into a specific programming language or a framework or a library. I mean, because we were doing microservices back time. Basically, for each service you can use anything that you like. You might use JavaScript for microservice A, Java for microservice B, and so on and so forth. Just make sure that we have you have the responsibility for it, and please do make sure that the decision that you made, it makes sense, it's justifiable, and we have the manpower to maintain it over time. I mean, I don't really want you to create a service like using Java, but only there's only one person within our team who knows Java. That's not make sense, right? So I trust my teammate a lot, my engineers a lot in terms of decision making. They probably need still come to me for approval or whatsoever, but I do trust them in a lot of decision making, and that's the kind of culture that I've tried building. And as for the company, well, I would say, well, I'm kind of biased here, but like the previous company that I led, Asumsi was the I think like have the best culture, but that's where I was the CTO, so I'm kind of biased. But in here at LinkAja, we also have a really, really good culture as well, where I almost never work above like 5 p.m. So I started work like around 9:30, and then like log out at 5, and then like people usually just log out after 5, which really surprising for me at first, but it's a really kind of like a good culture, and my managers really give us I can't really say with other groups, but at least within the core engineering group, he gave us freedom to do anything. He trusts us, and those are like that word trust is sometimes it's overused, sometimes it's less used, but if you do it correctly, if you like give the correct amount of trust to your peers, then basically they're gonna like perform really, really well. And well, I'm saying not all people can give those kind of trust like freely to anybody.
Emphasis on trust. That's great. We have another question from Martin. Martin, do you have your question?
Hi, Veri.
Hi, Martin.
Hi. So I was actually just wondering, I think because parts of the question have been answered, I'll modify it a little bit. So it's mostly asking about whether the salary of Indonesia for tech is because it's a bit lower than other countries. Does this affect the availability of labor there? And like, how do you see like companies moving like Indonesian startups? Do they hire more overseas, or do you see companies doing the opposite, where overseas companies have a tech team in Indonesia instead?
Okay. Well, in terms of salary, well, I won't say the software engineer salary in Indonesia is low, especially in big startups, right? In Traveloka, Tokopedia, and so on. Their salary sometimes doesn't make sense, especially Shopee, I could say. They gave their employees like an kind of like an infinite amount of money. Well, what I found out is that there's still a lot of engineers in Indonesia are underpaid, but this is because the company itself isn't focused on tech product. They probably only use tech as a support for their main business. So they don't see tech as a critical part of their business. That's why they don't really need to pay a lot for a software engineer. But for the companies that uses tech as their core, like Tokopedia, Traveloka, for example, they're willing to pay a lot if they happen to stumble upon a really great engineers. But it kind of creates an imbalance as well, where currently if you're like kind of like just starting a company, and you might only get seed funding, let's say, and then you kind of want to try to hire your first engineer. A lot of people wouldn't recommend you to try hijack engineers from those big startups because they're already like overpaid. Once I interviewed these product manager from Tokopedia, and her asking salary was like the same. And her experience was like it's in total it's 4 years, and it's only 2 years in product management, but her asking salary was like a bit higher than my lead product manager back then. And I was like shocked. And my lead product manager has like almost the same experience as me. So it kind of shocked me that the pay gap between big tech companies and non big tech companies are really huge. So that's well, so other than skill set, there's also a big pay gap between software engineers. That's what makes hiring software engineers in Indonesia is a challenge in itself. And that's why if you work in an outsourcing company or as a headhunter, well, you're probably gonna make a fortune, because software engineer, if you happen to like have a lot of connections with engineers from those big tech companies, then basically you're gonna make your company a fortune, because they already paid a lot.
Nice. Next, we have a question from Porter. Oh yeah, thanks, Juan. Next, we have a question from Porter. As an entry-level Sui, Porter.
Oh yes, I'm going to modify mine a little bit. So
okay,
I think he sort of answered it a little bit. I'm going to ask, like, with the knowledge that you have amassed over all these years, let's say we take you back to now you're a junior engineer, entry level, when you are interviewing and going to companies. What are some of the key questions you will ask your employer? What do you look out for basically when you want to join a company as a junior SWE?
So the questions that I ask the company, right? Well, I always ask what's the culture there, and whether the company support learning, and in what sense. I mean, well, sometimes companies sees that sending you to a conference somewhere, or like just buying you books is already enough. But then there are like other companies that goes greater length to provide you like free Udemy courses, or probably provide you I don't know, like some other stuffs, because that's in my perspective as the interviewer, that's gonna show me that, oh, you're really keen on learning, you're really keen on improving yourself, and you that's great that you want to know whether this company is going to be great for your career growth or personal growth, in this case. And other Then that is what else? And I usually add another one or two industry specific questions. Like for example, when I interviewed for LinkAja, I asked the CTO whether what's his point on the open APIs for banking, because like in Indonesia, in recent months there's a lot of open API related with financial things or even banking for that matter. So it's I think it's gonna be good for emails if you ask some industry specific questions like that.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Veri. I think we have time for one last question, which is Justin's question. Justin, do you have your question handy?
Yeah. Okay. So I think you sort of mentioned already stuff like when you work with like early stage startups, like there might be some challenges there. But perhaps if you have any more like, what are like some challenging, or what's like the most challenging part about working with early stage startups that maybe isn't like commonly known to like let's say if we enter there for the first time, what should we be on the lookout for?
Okay. So well, what's on the lookout is definitely if the founders, because when you're interviewing for early stage, you probably gonna talk with the founders before getting hired. You should ask questions and clarify for yourself whether the founders know what they're doing. Because like when at Buildeco like 4 years ago, my founders at the time didn't really know what he wanted to build. So we are basically building 3 different MVPs in 3 months. So it takes a lot of manpower, of course. Well, it was just me and like my CTO at that time, so there were just like 2 of us. But it takes a lot of time, and we've wasted a lot of time because like our founders didn't know what he wanted to build. That's why we kind of built this one thing at first, the first month, and then like we showed him and he kind of like uh, between meh and like not agreeing. And we get some input from him, and then we build the second prototype, and then like still kind of the same result, and then we built the third prototype in the 3rd month, and it finally the thing that we pushed to production. So and I'm saying this because this is not just like one or two features. This is an actual built from scratch prototype. So we're building 3 different products in 3 months. So you definitely need to know your founders better if you really want to move into early stage startup, and do background check on them. It's really important.
That's great advice. Awesome. I think unfortunately we're out of time for today. Ferry, maybe we can just wrap up with one last concluding question, which is, would you have any advice for our students here who are entering the software engineering industry for the first time? What would be your advice to them now in their journey?
Okay. So, well, definitely find a mentor if you can. I mean, it's gonna be beneficial for you in the long run. Well, it can be like from the same company after you enter one, or probably just you happen to know like a friend that's in software engineering, or you just happen to stumble upon someone in LinkedIn. Just don't be shy. Just ask him or her on comments or DM that whether they're kind of can be your mentor. And second one is just try. I mean, it might be daunting at first. You might feel that, oh, you don't know shit about software engineering. Oh, probably this is not something that I should pursue, I probably just get back to my old career. But well, that happens to me as a computer science grad. So just be resilient. I mean, it's okay if you feel suck during your first couple months. Well, because you're not a computer science grad, you're just learning programming. That's fine. I mean, people won't expect you to build a Facebook clone app right away. That's why you need a mentor to actually help you understand your current situation, what you're currently facing, because you might not the situation might be different with your previous career when you enter your first career as a marketing or whatever role that you first entered the job market. So yeah, definitely get a mentor.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Veri, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Sure.
Thanks, guys.